All right, we're on to chapter 2 on describing change rates. So, section 2.1 is on measures of change over an interval. So, change is measured in several ways. The actual change in a quantity over interval is calculated using just subtraction. Now, if we want to go to percentage change and average rate of change, those are two measures of change over an interval that can be calculated using simple arithmetic manipulation. Now, considering the average rate of change over smaller and smaller intervals leads to the more subtle concept of instantaneous change. Now, the study of instantaneous change uses a derivative, and that's one of the two major parts of calculus. So we'll get to that eventually. Now, if x1 and x2 are specific input values for the function of f, and x1 has to be less than x2, then we can do the change in f from x1 to x2 by just subtracting the input, input x2 into the function, get that value, subtract off inputting the x1 into the function, and we get the change. Now we can do the percentage change in f from x1 to x2 also. And then again, we just plug x2 into f and then subtract off x1 plugged into f divided by f of x1 and then times 100%. And that's going to be the percent change. And then the average rate of change in f from x1 to x2 is going to be the f of x2 minus f of x1 over x2 minus x1. Now remember, these f of x2 and f of x1, those are just really y2 minus y1 after you've plugged it back in. But you actually have to plug it in to see what those values are. All right, so interpretations of measures of change. So correctly calculating these measures of change is important, but then understanding the result and being able to state it in a meaningful sentence in the context of the situation is equally important. So in interpreting a measure of change, answer the following questions. When, basically you need to specify the input interval. What, we need to specify the quantity that is changing. How, indicate whether the change is an increase or a decrease, and then by how much. Write the numerical answer labeled with proper units. So when f of x, when change in f of x is measured, the unit of measure for the change is the same as the unit of measure of f of x, and it's the percentage change is a percent, and the average rate of change is the unit of measure of f of x per single unit of measure of x. Okay, we'll see that here in a second. And so what we need to do now is we need to calculate and write a sentence. Oops. Interpreting each of the following descriptions of change. We need to write the change, then we need to do the percent change, and then the average rate of change. Now, sometimes you'll see this one, the last one. Let's go ahead and get back to the purple here. That's sometimes the average rate of change. So they abbreviate AROC, and that's just so you don't have to say the average rate of change. You can say the AROC is blah, blah, blah. All right, so let's work on these. So, our ACT scores, the percentage of students meeting national mathematics benchmarks on the ACT increased from 40% in 2004 to 43% in 2008. And what we want to do is we want to first calculate the change. Well, the change, that's just going to be basically the new version minus the old, or the latter minus the former. So we'll take 43 minus 40, and we get 3. Okay. Now, that's 3 what? That's 3 percentage points, basically. All right. So, what do we need to do now? Now we have to write the sentence interpreting that. So, what we can say is we can say between 2004 and 2008, then you have to write all that out there. So, I'll just write that per. And then it increased because we went up 3 percentage points, and then we can say increased by 3 percentage points. Okay, and so that's what we need to do. So we calculated the first thing, that was this 3 percentage points. So that was the first piece we needed to do. And then the second piece was we had to write this sentence. So I'm not going to circle that, but that's our second piece. All right, so B, and I'm going to have to go to the next page to get the last one there, the AROC. So now we need to calculate the percentage change. Well, how do we do that? Well, what we do is we take remember, we're just taking the change, basically your y2 minus y1 divided by your y1. So we take the 43 minus the 40 divided by the y1, which was the 40. And so that oh, then times 100. Forgot that. So that's uh, 3 over 40 times 100%. And if we plug that into our calculator, 3 divided by 40 times 100 is going to be basically 7.5%. Okay. And that's all we have. We don't say percentage points. It was 7.5%. Okay. That was the percentage change. So what do we do here for our wording? Well, basically, we're going to write everything up until that last part of the sentence. This is the only thing that's going to change. So we can say, again, between 2004, and it's going to say increased again because we're still increased, and it increased by 7.5%. So this is kind of the piece that changed here. Increased by 7.5%. Here it increased by 3 percentage points. So that's, the key difference. All right, so now let's go to the next part, C. And C, we're doing the AROC. And remember, that's going to be basically our f of x2 minus f of x1 divided by our x2 minus x1. And so what do we have here? We have 43 minus 40 divided by our x2 was 2008 minus the first one was 2004. And so that's 3 divided by 4. And that's going to be 0.75. And their units here, they're going to be percentage points per year. Because remember, if we have it written over here, average rate of change is the unit of measure per single unit of measure of x. And so unit measure is percentage points and is per, and this is years. And so we're finding out how many years. So we're going to divide by 4 to get 1 year. And so that's going to be what we have for this first part. And so that is going to be our answer there. And then we have to write our sentence. So again, between 2004 and 2008, the percentage of students meeting national mathematics benchmarks. Again, we're not changing, it's still increased by 0.75 percentage points per year. Okay, so that's how we would do it. So we had our 3 calculations. We had just the plain old change, we just subtract it. We had the percent change, we subtract it and then divide by the initial times 100%. And then we found the AROC, so we did the subtraction divided by the difference in the years in this case, and then we have the 0.75 percentage points per year. All right, so I'm going to stop there and then I'll come back with this one.